we're here to talk about utility coordination, and basically, you know, the whole theme here was on sustainability. So we really want to look at taking utilities to the next level from the standpoint of sustainability. And zero RR is our mantra, basically, for dealing with utilities. Zero relocation, other relocation. And that came about when we were actually doing projects. We do many of you guys know us, and we do many of the projects within Dallas and other communities. But one thing here is that as being Dallas County, of course, we don't have the luxury of having the franchise agreements that many of the municipalities have. So coordination of utilities, especially when we started working on more urban type projects, became really, really difficult. And when we started really working with our utility companies, one of the things that came up was the fact that zero RR. In other words, avoid relocating twice, 3 times over and over again. That became the real issue, and that became really what we started seeing even with the utility companies, is avoid relocations. So what we're going to go through here is we're going to go and give you sort of like an overview of everything that we've gone through pretty much definitely in the last 15 years, looking at what we've done to take it to the next level. We're going to go through that, and then we're going to go and give you some reviews and how we kind of pull that together, how we pull teams together, how we work side by side. Can you see?
I can.
How we've made things in order to deliver projects, because that's the main purpose of us here at Dallas County, especially with working with the municipalities, is that we are a project delivering team and going in and getting things done. So we're going to also, I'm going to bring up 2 of our key areas. One is USWAT, and Leslie's kind of going to talk about how we look at USWAT, and then also RUG. That's going to be Carter Ferguson, our right-of-way group, that's going to talk about that. And again, we use a lot of acronyms, and I'll explain those in a minute. So, next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go over, what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to go over where we come from and how we've been through looking at dealing with utilities. So, again, this is the vision for Dallas County. And again, one thing here is we work off of a lot of strategic vision and mission statements, and this one right here definitely in the last couple of months has been really important for Dallas County. We do partner, a lot of things we do is in collaboration with other agencies. We have a small unincorporated area. We only have about 8,000 people in the 2.4 million people in the full county area. We are the 9th largest county in the country, but at the same time, most of the things that we do, we have to do in partnership, and we have to work. We have pretty much about 32 cities. We have agreements to do work within about 28 of those cities, but that is the way we do our work. And then, of course, healthy community is very important. We didn't think at Public Works we would be involved with that, but with the trails and some of those type of projects, we've been closely involved with making sure that becomes a model as well for us doing the work that we do. And then safe and secure and prepared, and then a critical regional team. We're looking at regional issues. We work closely with North Texas Council of Governments and many other agencies. And then, of course, making sure Dallas County is a destination of choice. So those are the things that our Commissioners Court has given all of us to do and to push forth all the different departments. But at Public Works, we take that further, and this is where we go. We go back to where we are basically to get those regional projects done. Also look at the quality of life issues and make sure that we work on a lot of charrettes. We work with a lot of these team people over here, and we are part of the process of making sure we plan the projects out as well. And then making sure we get high-value economic development type projects to occur throughout Dallas County. So this is a part of what we do. When you look at sustainability ties all that together, because sustainability is looking at communities, economic development, and environmental issues. All of that is about being sustainable. So that is where it all pulls together. But then the key thing here is, the next slide, is going to be bringing all that together. Because to be sustainable, all 3 have to come together to make it work. And that's how we look at everything we do, even utility relocations. Because utility relocations and right-of-way sort of like are the back child doing a lot of that work, but they are very vital. And if you don't take that and say, well, if you put that to the side and make that a second thing to do, oh yeah, we got to get this done too, then you will lose this bubble right here, because you have to make sure that those utilities are covered. I heard all this on complete streets, but guess what? You got utilities you got to deal with. They're right there on those streets. How are you going to deal with them? And those are the things that we look closely at right now in the sense of dealing with utility relocation. Next slide. So where we kind of came, and this is where we came from with how we kind of developed through that process. Well, we initially, for years, we did bond program projects. And the last one we did was 1991. And as a matter of fact, we're just now finishing up one of the ones right now. It's taken us that long to get those type of projects through the mill. But in around 1999, we decided to go to a more flexible program. In other words, a program to complement the bond programs of the cities, to give us more flexibility to do the work. So we do a lot of work now over what we call our major capital improvement program, in which we do a pay-as-you-go program that allows us to come alongside the cities with bond program projects to get them into construction. That gives us some more flexibility that when we actually go through charrette processes ourselves to develop those type of projects. And then when the city is firmed up, they usually go for a bond program and match us 50-50 on making sure those projects occur. That has been really successful. We've done over $1 billion worth of work since 1999 to make that occur. So that has been a very successful program. But one thing we realized is that to make this successful, we had to look at where we had problems. One of the major problems was looking at those areas of utilities and right-of-way. Next slide. And so we developed systems to really move forward to do that. And one of the main systems that we came up with was this 5-phase project delivery system. Next slide. And that 5-phase project delivery system is really a component of looking through and making sure every area to get a project delivered is covered. And number 4 primarily was this right-of-way completion and utility adjustment. Next slide. And this is how complicated we even did a flow chart and to see how complicated it really is. The judge saw this, it says a lawyer's, he didn't like that right there. But we set charts. This is what we had to go through to get our project delivered. This is something we came up with this, and of course utilities and right-of-way is right here on the chart. Next slide. So one of the first prototypes that we had was a project that we took from the 91 bond program over to the MCIP program. When we first started this project, we were really having a lot of problems on getting things resolved. And one of the major things was the utilities. We had transmission, we had distribution, we had underground, a lot of underground issues. We had water and sewer. There were betterment work that would need to be done on this project. So usually back in the past, what we would do is work closely with the cities, and they would come along and give us information. They would work on utility coordinations with us, and that wasn't working. So what we did was we started really taking an opportunity. I put Michael Morris' quote here so y'all can see the car people. So to see that we really took this seriously and said, let's look at being a little more innovative. So we started having a series of meetings with the utilities, not just utility monthly meetings, but having actual partnering meetings. We started going to and partnering with the top of those utility firms, and actually we sought to understand what it took to work with them. And we started talking about what would make your job easier and what would make our job easier. And we came up with a list, we call it the essential elements of utility relocation. One of the things that came out of there was the relocation, no relocations of the relocations. And we actually put that on there, and we actually all signed this agreement that we will work hard at it to make sure that we work to get these things accomplished. And that tactic came up with, we were actually at that time also working on a program called CMAC. How many of y'all have done CMAC projects? CMAC, the intersections from hell. We started working on congestion mitigation air quality projects. And what we found out is when we started bringing those groups together, we said, well, let's make teams. We brought our inspectors, project managers to the table. They brought their designers. All of the teams would come together. And then what we would do is actually meet and then go out the field together on a project and look at the project and work hard at looking at who needs to go and what needs to happen. The utility folks got so energized by it, they started training our inspectors how to read polls and how to look at what was going on in the field. And we started working close at hand with them, and we started calling ourselves the USWAT team. So anytime we had a utility issue, this team would come together, go in the field, look at it, come up with a tactical way to deal with it, and we would partner through the process. And then when we come to, we continued on with these partnering meetings. We actually had we're still doing these partnering meetings. These partnering meetings actually happen every quarter with Encore, Atmos, with AT&T, and we meet quarterly with them. And at the quarterly meetings, we could all shake hands together and say, we did it, we got this done. And it started actually being a process that we still had our monthly meetings. We still had those traditional meetings, but we would have these strategic meetings all the time on projects with the utility guys. And it made a big difference. And all of a sudden, the utility company started depending on us on any beck and call. They started asking us on how to help them out on textile projects. So we started going to the meetings with them with textile. We started going to different meetings with them because they knew that we understood what it took to get the relocations done. So next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, and then one thing we started realizing here is in the process was that right away usually had to get involved in that process. Right away, we've had easements that need to be worked on. We started realizing this was all about the right of way. Because if there's anything that you trying to avoid is avoid right of way takes and avoid conflicts with utilities. So we basically turned to our right of way agents and our right of way team and says, you're going to be a part of this USWAT team. But they said, no, we're going to call ourselves RUG. We're going to be the RUG team. And they actually became our utility coordinators. We actually started using them to do the coordination work with the utilities. Rather than just the engineering staff, they are now the utility coordinators team. They're the ones that put the monthly meetings together. They're the ones that work close in hands with the utility companies. And then the engineering group is there to make sure that we go through and look at the engineering issues, but then the right-of-way team is there also working side by side with them to make sure that we get the right-of-way cleared like we need to. Okay, so these are some of the things you're going to hear throughout this afternoon in discussion with Les and with Carter. Our 5-phase project delivery process, and Les is going to kind of touch on that. SUE is really kind of been really the main thing that has been sort of the main catalyst that helps us on project-specific detailing. And then, of course, I talked about all the different meetings. We have meetings, and matter of fact, we even have a utility partner awards breakfast now. The next one we're going to have is going to be this coming November. We have an awards breakfast, and we actually have all of our project managers, inspectors, everyone votes on the partner of the year. And then with that partnership, we actually do a presentation to Commissioner's Court. We actually give them an award. And I tease Atmos all the time. They send their guys over there so they can get trained by us, so they can move on up. Because usually their guys who get the awards always end up moving up the food chain and we lose them. But it's been really good because it encourages these guys to come in and really work hard on our projects to get things done. And we appreciate what they do. And it's really made a big difference. And then we do utility newsletters. We provide information to them, and we get feedback from them on what we put in our newsletters. And then, of course, one thing here for us here is project manager is the key. Project managers are the key because what they do, they're sort of like the quarterback to making sure all this process is done. And then in order to make sure we do the 0RR. And then, of course, the guidelines. The guidelines, the essential elements in having these utility checklists, these are things that are essential to making sure that we get the things done that we need to get done. Okay, with that, Les is going to talk more about project specific and the USWAT process.
Today I'm going to talk about, there's 3 objectives that we have for utility, trying to have sustainable utility initiatives here, and I present 3 objectives and then how to do those objectives. The first objective is that when we reconstruct a road, we don't want to come back, 6 months later and have it cut up for a utility to come in there and put in new utilities. So we try to have them plan for what they need now and then also the future. So go ahead and, while we have the road opened up, put in your utilities, and that includes, of course, water and sewer, the major utilities that would have transmission mains going through there that you may not even know about, but it's being planned. So we try to get with the various utility companies and water and sewer people to say, okay, do you have a large main that's going to go down through here, so that we can coordinate that with you. And then, of course, we try to coordinate with the franchise utilities and say, okay, here's your opportunity to put in a new gas main or a new duct bank or whatever, so that you're not coming back and cutting up a brand new road, 6 months later or even five years later. So that's one of the objectives. The second objective is that we try to get the utilities moved out of the way before construction starts. And actually, when the construction on the utilities, when they're being moved, we basically say, okay, construction started out there, because they are, that's part of construction, because if you don't get them out of the way, then you're going to hold up the construction for the road. And then, of course, we talked about the third objective, which is if they move a utility, let's not try to, let's not have them come back and move it again, because we didn't plan for them to, they put it in the wrong place, and now you got to move it again. So, let's see here. I'm going to go through these 5 items here as to how to, I'm going to get that back. So communication, instead of doing it the old-fashioned way where you design a project and then at about 90% you hand the utility companies the plans and say, now get out of the way, and you have a couple months to get out of the way. That's the old-fashioned way. We try to not do it that way. And what we do is at the very beginning of a project, we'll go out there and get basic SUE information and see if there's any major transmission towers or transmission lines in the ground or something like that that would affect the project. As if we're going to expand the road, is it going to be, are these things going to be in the way or whatever? And then, as the city of Dallas has talked about, the charrette meetings, we'll have a charrette meeting at around the 30% level, and we'll talk to not only the property owners and all the stakeholders that are involved, but we'll include the utility companies to come to these meetings and give their input at the meetings there. And we'll take their input and we'll get everybody's input, and then we'll start in with design, and then at the 60% design, we'll hand our plans over to the utility companies, and they'll take a look at it, and they'll say whether or not there are some. You go through with a fine-tooth comb there, and you say, okay, we may have a conflict here, and so if we can, we'll redesign like a storm sewer lateral to miss their utility, and when we try to iron out those differences at about the 60% design, so that the utility companies, if they have to move something, they can start their design and proceed on. And then at about the 90% percent of plans and the 100% plans, that's when hopefully they'll have their design done as far as moving their utilities. At that point, we start bidding the project, and hopefully they start moving their utilities. And then that 5 or 6 month period of where you get the project and the bids are received and you go through the award process, they have that 5 or 6 month period in there to move any utilities that they need to, and then when you award the contract, the utilities are moved. Now that's the ideal situation. Doesn't work out that way all the time, but that's what we try to do. And so therefore, overall, we try to get the utilities involved from 30%, from the 30% design, all the way down to 100% design. The basic thing about SPROW is that at the beginning of the project, you've got to set aside money for the subsurface utility engineering. And we recommend 1.5% of your construction cost as a rule of thumb for budget purposes. If you don't put that in there at the beginning, then you're very reluctant to have SUE done until it's forced upon you when the contractor, if you don't do it, the contractor is going to go out there and do it for you. And then you've got the job stopped. I think everybody probably knows about the different levels of SUE, record drawings. Go out and look at see if there's power poles and that kind of thing to check the record drawings. Then the SUE companies have different types of equipment that they can, electromagnetic equipment and so forth to see try to figure out what's underneath the ground there. And if you need the elevations, then of course you do the potholing, which is level A. This particular list we developed, if you go through this list and you do these things, then you've got pretty much utility coordination down to where you've covered most everything. This is kind of just a checklist that would go along with that milestone, the mile steps there that I showed you earlier. This is something that we came up with, and if you study this and you do all these things, then you're going to catch probably at least 90% of the utility conflicts before the contractor gets out there and catches them for you. Some of the key elements here is that you have to have the project manager's buy-in. If the project manager doesn't buy into this, then it's not going to work. The second thing is that you go out there with your muddy boots and say, oh, there's a yellow marker here that says gas line on it, and we don't show on our plans here that there's a gas line. So you go back and say, okay, we got to get this gas line on the plans here. Another item would be this one here. I'll show you some examples of this where you take the utility plans, which you have from the SUE people, and you color code those lines in your AutoCAD or MicroStation plans, and then you put that on top of your proposed facilities that you're going to do, and then what I call the fine-tooth comb method. You just go through there and look at each conflict where it crosses it and say, are we going to have a conflict there or not? And try to figure it out. And if you don't know if it's going to be, then have your level A go out there and figure out what the elevation is on the utility and try to solve this thing before the contractor gets out there. That's the whole object of this whole lesson here. So one thing that we have done that most people don't do is that when the utility companies go out there and put their stakes, okay, we're going to put a power pole here. We're going to put it over here. Or they made a stake where they're going to put the gas line. We'll go out there and survey those stakes ourselves after they put them in. Bring them back in, put them into the project coordinate system, and look at it and say, okay, are they going to wind up somewhere where they're going to have to relocate this power pole? And I'll give you an example here later of how that worked out. So those are the things there. Now, all this doesn't guarantee that you're going to catch everything. It doesn't guarantee that you're not going to have problems out during construction, that you're going to run into something that you just didn't know about. So, but this will eliminate a lot of the problems before the contractor gets out there. And this is just the coloring system for APWA for the color codes, and you'll see that if they go out there and mark the utilities on the ground, they'll use those colors. And so in our plans, we'll use those colors. Now, this is going to be an example of how you you can put the colors for the utility lines into your CAD system. Now, the old-fashioned way is you take a plane like this happens to be riverfront. You take a plane like this, you take out your coloring pencils and you try to color in the utilities and try to figure out how they are. Riverfront Boulevard is kind of an exceptional project in that if you take a cross-section through Riverfront Boulevard, you'll have at least 14 utilities in that cross-section and upwards of 20 utilities. So it's a utility-laden project, and trying to dodge all those utilities out there is quite a chore, as a consultant will attest to that. So you can look at it here and you can try to study a plane like this, and utilities are shown there, but if you color code them like that, you can see the utilities better. And one of the things you want to do is put each utility gas would be on one level or layer, whichever CAD operation you're operating in, MicroStation or AutoCAD, whether it's called level or layer. You put it on there and you put it by layer. That way you can change the thickness of the lines with just a click. I'm going to go through and pick every one of those single lines out. You set it up that way. And when you set it up that way, then you can also, let's say, isolate different lines. Now, in this particular instance, all these lines shown here, those lines right in there, besides the yellow line happens to be the storm sewer system, but the other lines there, those are lines that, in this particular instance, the Horseshoe project, they moved those lines to get out of the way of the columns for the bridge, for the new bridge that they're putting in in this area, Interstate 35. So we helped us isolate that so you can see what they moved and say, okay, did they affect any of the storm sewer laterals? We try to coordinate with them, and we did coordinate with them, so hopefully there's not any. This is just another example of, okay, can you see the utilities there? Yeah, if you really study it hard enough, but if it's color coded, then you can really see them. And then you can isolate it again. As far as checking the utilities out in the field, I'll show you a real life example of that a little bit later on. That's sort of how to, we take utilities to the next level, but here's some examples of making sure when we do a project that they upgrade the utilities when we're doing it. Mountain Creek Parkway, for instance, that's a good example. There was an existing 72-inch wastewater main that was running through our project, and then parts of it was running underneath the road or right next to the road. And we said, what kind of condition is this 72-inch pipe in? It's a Turning River Authority line. So we paid for an analysis of the line, and it showed that the top is deteriorating, the concrete is out, you can see the rebar and so forth. And so we convinced TRA that, okay, your line's not going to be in good shape here, and you're going to have to replace it, and we don't want it caving in and the road caving in. So they agreed to accelerate a program where they did put in a 96-inch wastewater main and to replace the 72-inch wastewater main. And as you can see there on that bullet 7, there's about 5,000 feet where we paid for it to be filled up with concrete. So, because it's still in the ground there, and we didn't want eventually caving in, and Mountain Creek Parkway caving in on top of it. I'll show you examples here on Gaston and Washington, and then Riverfront here. Also, Riverfront, right now, I just met 2 days ago with Atmos Energy. They're getting ready to install a brand new gas main all the way up through the project. And they're taking that opportunity to install it now instead of later, come back later on, 5 years from now and putting it in and tearing up nice landscaping or whatever that we put in there. This is the 96-inch pipe that was put in by TRA. That inspector, he's not a midget. He weighs about 250 pounds or so. That's where they're going in and putting in the 96-inch main, and right in here, we would be expanding out. This is before we expanded out Mountain Creek Parkway, so they're putting in in the main there. This is gas in Washington. There's a lot of utilities there that supplied Baylor Hospital. Baylor Hospital is right up and through there on the upper right left-hand corner. And so some of the unusual things about this particular project, this yellow line it's actually a red line in there to represent the electric line, because red's for electric, but we highlighted it with yellow here. But you'll see 4 manholes, one there, and one there, and one there, and there. Encore did not have enough room to scoot the line over, because they'd have to rebuild new manholes. And these manholes are 12 to 12 feet. And so what they did, and they hadn't done this in about 20 years, they went in there through the manhole lid and took out the bottom of the manholes, brought all that debris up through there, and lowered the manhole, the floor 5 feet, 5 to 6 feet, rebuilt the floor down in there and the walls, and all they had to do is, they just had to go through that small opening there to do all that. And it took about 4 to 6 weeks per manhole to do that, and they did it at night. And I got a picture of them doing it here. They did that, and then of course some other utilities came along. Atmos put in a new line up and down through there, took that opportunity. AT&T put in some new lines and so forth. This is where you can see right here, that's the manhole lid, and that's where they did all the work at night. So kudos to to Encore. Encore did an excellent job on this project. When we were doing the project, we discovered that there's a wood duct. You ever seen wood duct used for AT&T? I've heard wood duct used for water lines, but not for AT&T. So somehow or another, I don't know if they intentionally put in the wood duct for their facilities, or they took an old water line and used it. But anyway, it was discovered that the wood ducts were there, so they were replacing it when they had an opportunity, because we had the road opened up. Trying to use, this is an example of eliminating utility conflicts prior to construction, and this is an example here. This is Mountain Creek Parkway. The design was done by TxDOT, and when you look at this drawing and the next drawing, these drawings are kind of at a 1 to 100 foot scale. Can you see the utility conflict on there? Kind of hard to see. So what we did is, we went through there, we colored up the lines. This is, if you make the lines a little bit wider, then they pop out more. You want the utility lines to pop out so you can see them. So we made them pop out, and then you can do it with an aerial background, or you can do it like this. Now, where the conflict came in was right here at this retaining wall. See that AT&T line getting right next to it? And when you drill down to the details of it, yes, the AT&T line was in the footing of the proposed footing of the retaining wall. So TxDOT had come up with another retaining wall, real shaft, but because we discovered this before they started construction out there, the result is that AT&T was able to come up with their own solution. Results were we saved time, because the contractor was not held up during construction, because we found this conflict before they got out there. Second thing is we saved about $70,000 on the project, and the AT&T designer, he is actually appreciative of finding these conflicts before the contractor did. The final thing I have here is an example of eliminating zero relocation of relocation. This is Mountain Creek Parkway, where it's kind of out in the country, sort of. It's not in a real tight urban setting, but we gave the contractor's consultant our base sheets and everything. We went out and staked the right of way for them. So they went out and staked where they're going to be moving the power poles, and we went out and surveyed them. And on some of these stakes that we found, for instance here, that's gonna be an inlet, that's gonna be close to, storm sewer, that's gonna be in the storm sewer, So, they're, for some reason, they had it staked in the proposed pavement area. And so, we gave them a list of these items here, and so they could move their stakes, so that they didn't put the power poles in these areas and then have to come back and relocate them during construction. So we did that, and then this is another list of areas where the power poles and guy wires were going to be in conflict with something. So we got it all eliminated and taken out of the way. And that's how we achieved like an objective number 3, 0 relocation of relocation. Okay.
Thank you, Leah, for all your help in preparing the slides. We put together some information. We didn't know how relative it was going to be to today's topic, but we're going to make a stab at it anyway. I'm with the Property Division, and my title is Property Acquisition Supervisor, and I'm also acting as a coordinator, kind of the manager for our right-of-way utility group. On the first slide, we've got kind of an outline of what we're trying to do today. We try to define sustainability from our viewpoint, look at some of the key concepts that went into the planning part of project development, and then what I really was going to focus on is more or less what some of Dallas County's efforts are with regards to right-of-way acquisition and utility coordination that's peculiar to us. So let's go to the next slide. In trying to define it, my boss started working on this, and I took a stab at it too. It got way too wordy, but what we basically boiled down to was trying to find something that matched and dovetailed into what COG's definition was. It's basically about today's needs for right-of-way and utilities and planning for tomorrow's potential needs. And the other thing that we want to be cognizant of is it has to be cost-effective and economically feasible now and in the future. Next, please. Some of the primary concepts that our group has looked at over the years in designing projects with transportation, drainage. Now we include trails and open space, neighborhood connectivity, utility corridors, economic development. The first two items when I first went to work for Dallas County was all we really functioned on. Our primary emphasis was on the transportation aspect. What are the drainage aspects of the project? And do we have any major distribution of what I call the wet utilities? That's being water, sanitary sewer, the TRAs, the large Dallas County or City of Dallas transmission water lines. Those are the things we first looked at. Today we try to do a little bit more in what I think most people consider context sensitive. And I'm going to try to make this real quick so we don't run you too far behind. In what I tried to take out of this, we picked out one of the principles from what COG had published under its roadmap to sustainable right-of-way, and this was involve stakeholders and coordinate from start to finish. This was, I think, their number 3 priority, and I was going to try to make a connection on how we try to apply that principle in our work. I think the director mentioned earlier that our definition of partnering at the county level is trust plus commitment and shared vision. That's how we try to partner with all of our partners and stakeholders throughout every project. And at this level, once we get to the 4th phase where we're into right-of-way and utility relocations, most of our work is really based on building and sustaining relationships. Next slide. Since my background's in right-of-way, I always try to make a few comments, although this was more about utilities today. The first comment we had was you have to treat the impacted property owner fairly, which I think we all do, the agencies. And when I say with respect, that is really abbreviated for respect private property rights. We all do that, but if we don't continue to be sensitive to the property owner and to the property rights, those are the things that lead to further legislation and further challenges to make right-of-way more difficult and more expensive to get in the future. Another thing that our group is really good at, Craig couldn't be here today, our senior appraiser, is we always start with good estimate and adequate schedule. And from that, anytime we have any revisions to the project, we try to go back through and update our numbers to where we're always bringing our project manager and our partners a good budget. The next part is where we actually get into acquisition. That's when we get into direct contract with property owners, and that's a little bit different from the other phases. When we're in the public meetings and those type of those areas prior to actual offers and right-of-way acquisition, we usually have real good feedback and real good support. It's a little bit different when you're down on the ground and you're meeting with the property owners. Then you find out what problems or issues they may have with the project and specifically your offer. The other thing we believe in, and we have based on our practices and policies we have in place, is a real thorough process. That's becoming more and more apparent that you have to have that based on the recent changes that were enacted by Senate Bill 18 and some of the other processes that have come along. One of the other things that we're different from the other agencies is when we work on projects, we're not representing the county per se, we're an agent for the city. And as such, we only have so much authority as we're given under our agreements. So when we get out there, we want to represent that city well. We want to treat their property owners fairly, and we don't want to leave a bad impression with the owners or our agency partners. That's why we follow a process. It's very similar to TxDOT and pretty much conforms to the Uniform Relocation Act. There's another part to that later I'll get to in the utility phase. With regards to planning, we try to look, did I hit something or did you? We try to jump back to the planning phase to try to recognize and understand what the right-of-way component's going to be, and then also begin to understand what any type of utility conflicts, utility betterments may be to a project, so we can help our project managers and the designers come up with a better design. Next. Early on with the utility component of this, and they've talked about how that started. The utility component began with USWAT. We've now changed a little bit to RUG and our group. But the vision was and still remains to become a viable project delivery organization. And some of our predecessors understood, because we're acting as an agent for the city and we don't have any direct contracts or franchise agreements with utilities, we had to get their buy-in. We had to get their support if our process was going to be effective. So one of the things they had to do early was build up some type of level of trust and understanding with the utility companies. And doing that and communicating with the providers and having all different levels of meetings. Today we have monthly utility meetings. Many of the other cities have those as well. We're not the first nor the last to do that. Some of our staff even try to attend some of the other meetings to keep up with their projects. But in addition, we have quarterly meetings with some of the higher supervisors for some of the utilities. And then we also include the designers and the reps from utility companies on specific project meetings, so we can keep those people informed of any changes and developments on specific projects. Once we started doing those things, we both determined that the investment in the time was worth the savings that both agencies, the agency and the utility providers, wound up with. One of the things that was started, and we try to continue that, is that we develop a good, consistent process with how we gather information, how we provide information that the utility providers need from us, so they can prepare their designs, and then once they release us their documents, what we can and can't do, and not compromise their trust in us with their documents. Not everything that a utility company provides you is information that can be released outside of your agency. One of the best things we do with our meetings right now is we continue to provide accurate information and give them realistic schedules and updates to our schedules and our budgets, but really our schedules, to help them plan their capital budgets and resource allocations. We understand that even AT&T, Encore, and the bigger utilities, they all have budgets and schedules and years they can do work into. So as long as we can help them to keep their budgets moving along with what we actually have, we found that helps us a whole lot with those utilities. The one thing they told us early on, and I'm a believer of it now, it requires continued communication, collaboration, and cooperation if we're going to have any sense of success in achieving our goals and project delivery. This is just an example of the monthly utility report that we take and update with all of our project managers, and we provide this information digitally to the utility providers ahead of our meetings, so when they get there, they've had a chance to review the data and make any updates with us instead of going through it. And it keeps our meetings going and keeps the schedule going on our meetings to where we're not spending a whole lot of time going through and making changes at the last minute. The director talked about some of the utility partnering breakfast and awards. These are some examples of some of the activities we have. The top left picture is the actual award breakfast. The second and third picture in the bottom corners are both pictures taken from the resolutions given in court, where we have different classes of awards. We not only give them an award, but they also generate a resolution where the court presents those recipients with a resolution in open court. And a picture of one of the individual awards when we've taken them out, their plaque or their award from court. Part that will be a little better. Just a few projects that I'll run through real quick to try to give you an idea of what we do or where we are right now. And the first one is Pleasant Run. I have two Pleasant Run projects. This is the proposed one. Right now, this is really easy. From a right-of-way and utility standpoint, this is what we like. This is simple. This is a rural section. It's a 60-foot existing right-of-way. It's in open fields. It's in an area that needs to be developed. We're proposing a 130-foot wide right-of-way, all sorts of room for amenities, for utilities, and for future development and enhancements in the process. That is, excuse me, let me get to my notes so I don't miss that part. On the proposed sections we have here, this shows some of the existing utilities, municipal utilities that were already in place, in addition to a section that they decided to put an additional 70-foot wide right-of-way on the southern side of the existing road, so they can go in and have a corridor for future water line and franchise utilities as well as other amenities. This was real nice because this was, like I said, open. There wasn't bounded by any development, so you're really only limited by how much you want to go, and most of the property is owned by a single entity that's in the process of developing it on a commercial basis, and they're supported. The other thing about this is in Southern Dallas County. This is one of COG's initiatives and the Southern Dallas County Initiative. It's under their Southern Dallas County, Infrastructure Analysis. And COG is one of the funding partners for that particular project. And this is the first project where Dallas County will be leading the development of water and sanitary sewer. It's a new area for us. Just past the limits of that project is a project we're finishing up, and they're going to have the ribbon cutting this next month. This is an overpass project that was actually a TxDOT off-system project. We were involved in the design, right-of-way and utility work on this project. This was an interesting project from both aspects in that we had some right-of-way challenges. It was already developed. Did have some vacant land. Business, but the most challenging part of this project, I think, was we wound up having to pay for reimbursements for, I think it was 3 transmission towers and some distribution from Encore Transmission and Distribution. Those costs were in excess of $1 million, and this project had federal funds, and so we were able to get reimbursed our cost share on that utility component. Let's back up just a little bit more on that one. I'm getting too many of them confused there. What I would say on that Pleasant Run overpass project is that Encore stepped up big time for us to really help us maintain our schedule so we didn't get into conflict with their peak season restrictions from taking down lines. They worked with us. We went into reimbursement agreements. We spent a lot of time on that. And after that, we've gone in back with Encore, and we're doing it with another utility company now, developing our own specific reimbursement agreements with those utilities, which we think will help us save time and speed the process on future projects. Okay, now we are Harry Hines. This is a project that's about to go into construction. We've been working on the utility component of this project for a while. This is more of probably what you gentlemen would think of as your urban project. This is all being done, all this design is taking place in right-of-way at Harry Hines and Walnut Hill. It's owned by TxDOT. There is no additional right-of-way for this project. Plenty of utilities, but there is no right-of-way. Even then, we still took the extra steps to accommodate the property owners in TxDOT to have several public meetings and then have several private meetings to address their concerns and see if there was way. We even had council involvement and commissioner involvement at some of these meetings to where we could try to address these people's concerns and come up with the best design possible. As a result, they changed up the footprint and some of the profile of the proposed step-ups to elevate to get to the bridge structure, but overall the footprint has stayed the same. This shows a few of the utilities that were involved. We had numerous telecoms out here on this project because it is a built-out area. It's zoned industrial, but predominantly it is commercial, retail area of Dallas. And as a result, we had to coordinate with a lot of the telecoms to make sure we could resolve conflicts. Encore had multiple poles that had to be replaced, including one engineered concrete pole. They did a great job on their end. AT&T stepped up and is completing its relocations and reconnections, and this project's going to go into construction next month. And so this is another one that's given us a little bit more experience in that area that is probably more typical of the projects you get into with context. And I think that's about all I want to say, and I'm going to turn it back over to the director for closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay, with that, what you've seen here is, again, you know, we didn't know what sustainability was when we first started this whole process, but you see that there's elements that reach out and do touch sustainability throughout, and even looking at utilities and looking at right-of-way. What we're kind of looking forward to in the future here is, and we do have a lot of good discussions with our utility companies here, is we're looking at this whole issue with corridors and how it's working. You know, we are looking, you know, we do even complete street projects, and we're looking at narrow right-of-ways and those components. So how do the utilities fit? Of course, you saw Pleasant Run. Pleasant Run is wide open space. That's easy to plan, and we brought them to the table to start talking about how there's a corridor specifically for them. But when we start looking at urban areas, we have to look closely at that and see how does that work when we're dealing with roadways that now we're tightening up the right of way and we're looking at those issues. That's something that we're beginning to talk with utility companies as well. The other thing here is we put their environmental constraints and impacts. Again, thinking out of the box when you're talking with utility companies. Again, you'll be surprised, you know, the big thing here with most of the times here is you kind of look at utility companies as, okay, come along and do what you need to do. But even getting them involved early in the process, in the alignment process, makes a big difference. Starting them in the planning process. And going to the top, because some of the utility coordinators are not going to come to those meetings you tell them to come to. But when we go to these quarterly meetings, we make sure we tell the people at the top that we need them to be a part of this process and to get them there at those meetings and to start being a part of that. And actually, you know, on many projects, since they know that we work with them really, really closely, a lot of these guys do come and bring a lot of great input to many of our projects. And many of the cities are even looking at them like, okay, I thought he was with AT&T. Well, he's providing impact to the alignment as well when we're discussing project alignment issues. And then the public acceptance and influence. One of the things too that we did discover here, and you noticed here, is that we are heavily involved with the construction of the utility work. Matter of fact, you know, some of our right-of-way people out there at the Baylor site of Gaston, Washington, they were out there at night at 12 o'clock at night looking and reporting back on what was happening with the utility companies. We tell the public usually on our projects that we actually count them as part of the construction phase. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to do a project at Copper Hill, and we actually credited their work as starting construction. Because we'll be out there, and the people will see them, and that's part of the work that needs to be done. So the mindset of clear utilities and then we come in construction, no, we look at it as this is part of the full phase of construction. And making sure that they're at the meetings, those public meetings and part of the public process. They need to be there. They need to be a part of that because they need to be listening in and taking and being fully involved and fully engaged. Once we've been able to engage them and show them that they're part of the process and make sure their top level folks understand they're part of the process, that's made a difference in the way we do and get the work out. But we still have challenges. It's not perfect. We still have issues, but at the same time, it's made it where we can get a lot of things done, and that number 4 on our list is clearly something that we are doing and getting done and achieving. Okay, with that, we're finished, and if you have any questions and answers, this is question time period.